Hello, and welcome to the Dance Physio Podcast, a podcast designed to explore ideas and foster discussion around dancer health and wellness. We're here to challenge the status quo, bridge the gap between dance science and the studio, and help change the landscape of the dance industry for the better. I'm your host, Erika Mayall, a dancer turned physiotherapist who is deeply passionate about leaving the dance world better than I found it. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Before we get started with today's episode of the podcast, I just wanted to let you know about an exciting opportunity I have coming up. On Sunday, March 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern, I am going to be running a free NeuroFlex masterclass for dance teachers. This masterclass is going to be all about exploring the missing link in dancers' flexibility training and looking at the nervous system and how it controls our mobility and how we can harness the power of the nervous system to improve our dancers' mobility and flexibility. If you have not listened to the podcast episodes that came out in January all about the nervous system's link to flexibility and mobility in dancers, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to those. I will link them in the show notes. And if you are interested in learning even more about this topic, I really encourage you to join me for this free masterclass on Sunday, March 3rd. I will post the link to register for that masterclass in the show notes as well, or you can go to any of my social media accounts. I'll have the registration information there, as well as on the website www.allegroperformance.com, and you can just search for the masterclass under the education opportunities. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will let you get started with today's episode of the podcast. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dance Physio Podcast. I am super excited for today's episode as we have a guest on today. So I'm going to be chatting with Kirsten Kemp, who is also known as the Confident Dancer, if you follow on social media or things like that. So Kirsten is a former full-time professional ballet dancer turned high-performance mindset coach for dancers. She's an international speaker and founder of The Confident Dancer, specializing in helping dancers break through the mental blocks that have been holding them back and build a confident mindset that allows them to feel and perform their best consistently. On top of serving over 200 clients globally, including soloists and principals in top ballet companies and YGP finalists, she's also the host of the Confident Dancer YouTube channel and podcast, a show that has over 21,000 subscribers and counting. As a speaker, she also has had the honor of speaking to groups of dancers at top institutions such as Miami City Ballet School, the Estonian National Ballet, University of Utah's School of Dance, Texas Ballet Theater, and many, many others. So welcome to the podcast today, Kirsten.
Thank you, Erika. I'm so excited to chat. I always love the opportunity to connect with people who, like yourself, who are also helping dancers in such an excellent way. So I'm sure we'll have a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So let's dive in. I always love to start by just kind of hearing about what people's sort of first experiences or memories of dance are, or kind of how you got into dance, or if you're willing to go back and just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes. So I think I was dancing in the kitchen after seeing a Barbie movie or something. And I'm pretty sure Barbie in this movie I watched did something like a soutenu. So I was doing that in the kitchen and I had no idea that I was doing ballet. But my mom came over and she was like, "Oh, that's a ballet step." And I was like, "What? What is ballet?" And she was talking about it. She hadn't danced herself ever before. So she was just like, "Oh yeah, it's a form of dance. Do you want to take classes?" And so alas, the next semester it was available. I got signed up with my twin sister and I started taking ballet lessons. The funny thing is that I like to say on all these podcasts I've been on is, shockingly, I actually didn't really like ballet for about 4 years, but I kept doing it. I kept signing up every year. And it's funny because my mom didn't ever make me do it. She was never a stage mom. She was always supportive of whatever I wanted to do. And I'm wondering if it was the performances, the recitals at the end of each year that kept me coming back. But suddenly around age 10, when we stopped jumping around and using tambourines and playing games, and we started actually really doing technique class, that's when I really fell in love with ballet. And then the bug bit. Then I've been obsessed ever since. I decided around the age of 13 or 14 that I wanted to pursue a professional career. And I really only decided at that age because I truly didn't know that it could be a career. And I certainly didn't know how to make that happen. I think I learned what summer intensives were when I was 12 or 13. So I just grew up at a small recreational studio, and there weren't very many other girls who wanted to pursue it professionally. So until one of my friends actually also discovered the professional path, I didn't know about it until I learned about it from her. So then I was like, oh my gosh, this is a thing? Awesome. So I stayed at that small school until I was 17. And I think by the age of 15 or so, I was begging my parents to let me go to a boarding school and all this stuff. And they didn't let me do that. Now I think that was a perfectly sensible decision. But I was able to go to lots of really good summer programs throughout my years staying at my small school, and that really, really helped my training. So I went to the San Francisco Ballet School and Houston Ballet Academy, and a few other summer programs, and that's really where I started to understand more about the intricacies of technique and the standard of excellence that it would take to make this a career. And I just became more and more motivated. So after spending summers going to various summer programs and coming back to my small school, my parents finally let me go to a year-round program, which ended up being the Houston Ballet Academy. And I was 17 when I went there. I'm extremely grateful that they let me do that because it was extremely integral to learning proper technique. And I totally transformed as a dancer in a short amount of time. However, towards the end of my second year there, obviously programs like Houston Ballet are geared towards helping their dancers get professional contracts right after graduating from the program. But at the time when I was graduating from the program, I started to experience a lot of difficulties with my mental health and in my mindset towards myself and towards my abilities. I just had a lot of struggles I was dealing with, from the injury I was dealing with at the time to I had a difficult relationship with one of my main teachers, and just my self-confidence was truly at an all-time low at that point. I don't want to speak badly of the school at all. That was just very representative of what I was going through at the time. And so it ended up being a really great choice for me to go to college. And I'm so thankful I got into two great programs, Indiana University and the University of Utah, both of their dance programs. And I ended up being able to go to the University of Utah on a great scholarship. And I had a fantastic experience there. And that was truly a very healing and wonderful experience for me, because I got to not only continue to improve in my technique, and I had so many great performance opportunities, but also a really, really big part of why I say it was so healing is because I really got to know this other side of me that is so much more than just a dancer. And, if I'm truly telling the truth here, I know I'm making a long story longer, but if I'm really telling the truth, towards the end of my time at the year-round program in Houston, I started to get so tired of just talking about ballet all the time, only doing ballet, like eating, sleeping, like that was just my whole life. And I started to really crave just getting to know the different parts of me that were intellectual, very curious, interested in business one day. And so it was really a great fit to get a degree. And after that, I ended up getting to dance professionally with the Oklahoma City Ballet. So yeah, that's how I ended up getting into a professional company.
Awesome. That's such a great story. And obviously also was like the spark, or sort of like that first little interest in moving more in towards sort of the mindset piece of things.
Yes.
And really looking at like that side of things, which is so interesting. So I'm curious, like, during the time you were then like dancing professionally, was that still something that was in the background? Did you start doing your training towards that at that time? Or was that something like once you had retired from professional dancing that was the transition? Or how did that transition happen?
Yeah, great question. So, ironically, this is why I'm so passionate about encouraging dancers who are around 18 or so, and they're like, what am I going to do with my life? And what am I going to do if I don't make it in ballet? And, we make all these grand plans and we think we have to have it all figured out. And let me tell you, you don't. Don't worry about it. It works out. So I definitely thought, you know what, after ballet is over, this was my plan in college. I studied finance so that I could set myself up to get a master's in finance. And then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go into finance, be like a business person, and just leave ballet behind and just become successful at something else. There were a lot of, now that I kind of psychoanalyze my state of mind at that time, I realized there are a lot of egotistical reasons for that. And also trying to cope with what I thought would be so painful about feeling like a failure of leaving ballet. And yeah, there was so much to that, because what ended up causing me to transition away from dancing full time is I had this knee injury that just came back with a vengeance, and it ended up becoming something that I really needed to fully step away from dance and remove all pressure from myself in order to fully recover from it. But what was really amazing is that at the time that I was dancing professionally, I had really recovered so much from a lot of the insecurities and the performance anxiety. I used to have such bad performance anxiety, especially when I was in Houston. Yeah, at that time, when I was dancing professionally, I actually was very secure in my own confidence, and I felt very sure of myself and very joyful as I was dancing. It was really the injury that was causing me to move away. But as I looked back on my training and career, when it was really time for me to say, okay, what's next? A few interesting things had transpired. So the first is I started to look back on my journey and I realized I kind of had this open question mark of, man, why was I struggling so much when I was training full time at Houston Ballet? Like, and why was it that when I got into an environment that felt like I had professors who were very open about their belief in me, they were very encouraging, they gave me space to do what I needed to do. It was amazing how instantly there was a huge shift in my mood, in my confidence, even my physical health. I went from constantly struggling with injuries back to back when I was in that my last year in Houston Ballet to not having actually a single injury that took me out during college. I was just like so curious about what was it that was going on with me psychologically that could have changed my ability to perform and my view of myself and my mood so much. So it was kind of something I didn't have an answer to at the time when I was transitioning careers, but I remember looking back on that and being like, I really, really think that our mental state has so much to do with our ability to perform. And obviously, our sense of satisfaction, mental well being, our self confidence, all those things. I knew that there was something really significant about the mental side of ballet. And, all dancers hear that, right? Like, ballet is so mental, or whatever style of dance you do. We all know that there's such a mental side to what we do. But it started to really occur to me that that's such a point of frustration for so many dancers. And it had been for me in my past. Like, yeah, I get it. Confidence is important. I get it. It's important to believe in yourself. I get it. I don't want to struggle so much with nerves that makes my performance on stage so bad compared to rehearsals. I don't want to struggle with that. And I heard what my teachers were saying, like, you have to believe in yourself. But I was like, how? Literally how? Like, someone just give me the answers, and it started to drive me nuts. So anyway, kind of going back to that time where it was the beginning of 2018, and I knew it was time to move on from dancing professionally so I could heal. It was actually during the last few months when I was in the company and I was really trying to make ballet work. I was like, I'm going to get better. And I was still going to rehearsals, even after I was still recovering from my knee surgery. And I just wanted to go be around my friends. So it was during the time where I got to watch so many rehearsals that I started to really be able to observe my peers. And I thought, oh my gosh, how amazing is it that they could even straighten their knee without pain? How amazing is it that they could jump? Because it had been so many months since I had been able to do that pain free, it really gave me the opportunity to look very objectively at what my peers were doing and say, wow, it's actually amazing what we're able to do. Yet I was watching my peers, you know, perform beautifully. And then at the end of their Grand Allegro, come off to the side and say, well, that sucked. And I just watched this over and over and over again. And I also saw myself, my past self in them too. And it started to just build up in me this like, this just isn't right. Like, we have to do something about this. Why is it that these beautifully trained dancers who really are so capable are so down on themselves? And I know there are so many different reasons for that. So I don't for one second blame dancers. It just stirred in me this passion to pursue answers. And so many of my peers at the same time were coming to me for encouragement. They like to talk to me. I love to encourage my peers. And I didn't actually know that what I was doing was kind of like coaching with my friends. I would ask them questions. I would want to help them, reframe their perspective. And long story short, I ended up discovering around that time what coaching was. I randomly had a few people say, you sound like a life coach, or I bet you would be good at life coaching. And I was like, what the heck is that? I truly didn't know what it was. So I started to look into it, and there were an interesting series of events. My twin sister, was also transitioning careers at the same time, and she ended up finding this that she wanted to be a career coach. And again, I was still like, what is coaching? This, okay, Kelsey, that's cool for you. And she was like, you know what? I signed up for this certification program. You can come to the first training weekend for free as a guest. And I was like, I might be busy. I don't know. Meanwhile, like, I was looking for, what am I going to do with my life? What's next? I had just decided to end my contract, and I was still teaching ballet, but I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So I was like, okay, I'll go, whatever. So I show up, and it's this executive and life coaching certification program. I show up to the first weekend, and I'm like, well, I'm here all weekend, so might as well act like I paid to be here, so I could get the most out of it because I'm going to be here. So within the first day, I was like, oh my gosh, coaching is so cool. It's this process of mostly asking questions to the person you're working with, your client, so that they can deepen their self-understanding and so that they can start to question the behaviors and the choices and the mentalities or beliefs that are not working for them. And they can discover a new solution that leads to, a new way of thinking, feeling, and acting that can yield totally different results. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've wanted to do with my peers all the time. I love this. This is a job. So I basically signed up on the spot. And then that was the beginning of many certifications I ended up doing. And I decided, you know what? Dancers need this. So that's a whole other story I could get into. I don't want to be too long-winded here. I know I already have been, but that's how I discovered coaching, and it ended up becoming what I'm doing now.
That's so awesome. I love that story and how it kind of just like serendipitously came about and through
Yeah.
there. I want to go back, just something you sort of said in terms of like you really struggled with like sort of nervousness and anxiety with performance and things like that. And I think that's something that a lot of dancers can relate to. And we're sort of heading into the kind of peak of competition season, at least in North America, sort of over the next few months. And I'm curious if that's something that you work a lot with dancers on, is that kind of like performance anxiety piece of things. And if you have tips or tricks or strategy suggestions for them to try and address that or overcome that, because it sounds
Absolutely.
like you managed to at least work with it.
Oh, yes. I'm super passionate about helping dancers resolve extreme nervousness, or many call it performance anxiety, because I know from personal experience how debilitating it can be and how frustrating it can be to experience dread or being so nervous that you wonder if you even want to perform anymore. Um, and I know how it can also affect your performance. And then you feel so badly about, like, why can't I just perform like I did in the studio? And it can affect your career outcomes. So yeah, that's definitely a big thing that I help dancers resolve. In addition to other core things I help dancers with, is overcoming self-doubt, things like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, comparison, low self-confidence, all sorts of things like that. But to give you some actionable things, or to give the dancers listening things they can do to start to work through that performance anxiety, I'll give you a couple of the places to start that I often suggest with clients. Number one, let's start to examine our relationship with the sensation of nervousness and anxiety. So for a lot of dancers, we can experience that feeling of rapid heartbeats. Maybe you're experiencing flashes of images in your mind of you messing up on stage, the worst possible thing happening. You start to experience a lot of racing thoughts like, oh my gosh, what if that goes wrong? And maybe then you feel led to do certain behaviors like triple, quadruple check your pointy ribbons to make sure they don't fall off. And, you're obsessively practicing. And meanwhile, it's a really miserable experience for a lot of us. It's physically very uncomfortable, and it's scary to have all those things going on in your mind. And so where I like to start is becoming familiar with, okay, what is it that comes up for you? When does it start? Okay, so for a lot of dancers, it's at the moment, maybe they're fine in the dressing room, but when they go backstage, that's when all those things start to come up. Or maybe I've had clients who are even principal dancers in companies. They're well-established professionals, and they tell me, yeah, I experience dread even a week before opening night. Okay, so we get clear on, where does this feeling start? What does it feel like for you? What do you experience? And then, like I said, I start to ask them, okay, when that feeling of like the rapid heartbeat or, the jitteriness, when that comes up, what do you think that means about how you will perform? And so many dancers have this relationship with the feeling that since the last time they performed with that feeling, they sense it went badly, they start to project, oh no, I'm feeling nervous, I'm feeling anxious, so I will perform badly. That is such a normal assumption to make. But it's really powerful in starting to overcome that anxiety or extreme nervousness to say, okay, what if I started to remove or detach that meaning from the physical experience of nervousness or anxiety? What if I started to allow that feeling to be there without assuming it will destroy my performance? So I start to invite dancers into this perspective of, well, what if you could start to dance with that feeling? And it's maybe a foreign idea, or some dancers might be skeptical, like, okay, well, could that really work? But let me tell you what actually happens when we start to try out this new way of thinking, or this new relationship with that feeling. What happens is, typically when dancers experience, I'm just going to simplify it, say performance anxiety. When we experience performance anxiety, the first time it starts to come up, we're already thinking, oh, no, 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 I cannot feel this way. I have to feel calm, think positively, think happy thoughts. We try to get rid of the feeling. And that actually intensifies it for a lot of us. We think, no, I have to get rid of this. I can't think this way. This is so miserable. Like I can't I can't think that way. And that resistance actually increases the feeling. And it also increases the sense of, I sometimes call it superstition. I jokingly call it that, like, oh no, because I feel this way, this means I'm going to perform badly. But if we start to just normalize, hey, it is okay to feel this. And what can I do to actually have a beautiful performance on stage? Is it just focusing on the character? Is it just focusing on the mechanics of my plie between every movement? Sometimes when we just focus the mind on what can I do instead of catastrophizing, like, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? That can also really, really ground us. So normalizing that feeling, ironically, it doesn't mean we're accepting that we're going to feel it every time we perform. Ironically, what I've seen in my clients is it actually starts to reduce the level of anxiety they experience. So that's the first thing. And then the next thing, I'll just give two for now, is to remember that confidence is really just the feeling of being sure about something. And so many dancers want to feel confident going out on the stage. Yet what they're focusing on is, what if I mess up? What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? That's going to be the exact opposite of what brings us to this feeling of confidence. So what I encourage dancers to do is to really focus on what can they be sure about going on to that stage. And so many dancers will want to say, okay, well, I know I should think I can do it. Well, maybe that doesn't feel like a believable thought for you right now. Maybe you can start with baby steps of, I'm sure that even if I make a little mistake, I can keep going. I'm sure that even if I make a mistake, that I can still share a feeling that the audience will enjoy. I'm sure that there's this one part I feel very confident in, and I can totally deliver in that part. That's what really starts to help dancers tap into that feeling of assuredness. And I'll just give one more other really important thing. I know I said two, but this one is super helpful for resolving performance anxiety. I really go into our beliefs around performing. Anytime that I'm working with a dancer who experiences performance anxiety, I say, okay, what are some of your beliefs around performing? Like, I'm not good at it. I'm not a consistent performer. It's pressure. I have to do well, all these things. And a lot of times the beliefs make perfect sense given their past experiences. Maybe their beliefs are, I'm not a consistent performer, because they actually have evidence in their past that they did make really embarrassing mistakes on stage, or mistakes that they felt very embarrassed about. Maybe other people didn't even notice, but they felt super embarrassed by that. So we go back and say, okay, what were the past experiences that made that feel true? And what can you actually learn from those past experiences to help you forgive yourself of that, let that belief go that you're not good at performing or whatever it is? And what can you actually do going forward to help yourself have the performance experience that you want to have? And that really does help dancers to undo the belief systems that are really bringing that feeling up of anxiety every time.
So you touched on this a little bit in your own story with your own kind of history of injuries and how you noticed that mindset was playing a really big role in your ability to deal with the injury and recover from the injury. And obviously in the clinic, we're dealing with people who have injuries. They're potentially away from dance or limited in what they can do in dance with their injury. And I'm just curious, if you have sort of practical tips. I mean, we know from research that we see different outcomes in injury recovery, not just in dancers, but in other sort of injury populations as well. Outcomes that are linked to different sort of like mental health statuses. Mm-hmm. And so we know that obviously mindset and mental health plays a huge role in our ability to deal with an injury and heal from an injury. And so I'm curious if this is something that you work with dancers on frequently, or if you have kind of, practical tips and things like that, if we have dancers who are kind of experiencing these setbacks or injuries or things happening that maybe seemingly a little bit out of their control sometimes. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, so many thoughts. Um, so yes, I definitely have worked with a lot of dancers who are either currently experiencing an injury, or I start working with them in my 4 month program, and then they suddenly get injured, and our discussions and our topic changes. Our goals, of course, change to suit their situation. So it's something I see a lot, and absolutely I can verify from my personal experience. And as you know, you referenced research on this, it is a fact that stress, even anxiety and depression, there are chemical reactions going on in your body that are associated with these emotions, like stress, for example. I remember, to tie this back to my personal experience, when I was so stressed and putting so much pressure on myself to get better now because my whole career was at stake. I can feel that stress in my body. And I ended up learning about how when you are in stress, it does inhibit your body's ability to heal. I mean, of course, you're the real professional here on this. Would you agree with that, Erika?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of research that kind of supports that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to say, for any dancer going through an injury recovery process, based off of what I just shared, that doesn't mean the expectation is that you need to be positive all the time. I really want to bring a lot of compassion and empathy into this discussion, because there is quite a pressure that dancers feel to be so productive during this time, to be so positive, and to like get back as soon as you can and be the perfect patient. But in that, we're just putting more pressure on ourselves to feel a certain way, to have a particular outcome. And I think it really comes back to this idea of control and the relationship that dancers tend to have with control. We, it's interesting that, dance training tends to promote a high value on personal responsibility for your outcomes. And so it trains us to be highly disciplined, very motivated, very goal oriented, and action oriented as people. And that has so many benefits. Also, I'm pretty sure that dance, especially competitive dance or forms of dance, probably tends to draw in people with, we could say, type A personalities, to really simplify it.
For sure.
So yeah, it's very common. I definitely relate to that label. So why I bring that up is because um, this is really actually a great opportunity while you're recovering, not just to continue to have the same paradigm or way of thinking, like, okay, I have to be the perfect patient. I have to, if I get surgery and my doctor says, you could get back in 8 weeks, you know what? I'm going to do all the exercises right, so I'm back in 6.
Yeah.
Typically, in that mentality, we're actually just trying to go right back to our old relationship with control. We love to have control over our bodies, which of course, that's part of what makes us really effective as dancers, is making choices where we're actually controlling our bodies to do these particular movements. However, an injury is usually a time where your body is trying to restore equilibrium. It's actually trying to say, hey, through these pain signals, we've gone too far. I'm going to give you these pain signals so that you step back and take care of your greatest teammate, which is your body.
Yeah.
So what I love to tell dancers is um, a couple things. Number one, this is a time where you get to treat your body as a teammate. And think, if you're on a team with another human, would you really be a good teammate if you never, ever, ever listen to them and we're like, no, this is what you're going to do. And you just listen to me. I know we said we're teammates, but I'm really the boss here. I get the talking stick. You don't get to say. No, you would be a terrible teammate and no one would want to work with you. So what I love to say is, work with your body like a teammate. That requires that you not only listen to it, but you also trust it. And that is so much easier said than done. So I want to share a couple ideas that help you to actually put that trust in it. something that was a radical idea for me when I was recovering is that my body actually wants to heal and it wants to do that on its own. It knows how to do that. Now, obviously, there's a reason why we have great physical therapists, and because, yeah, it needs some guidance for sure. Like if you're recovering from a knee surgery like me, I needed some help with some particular exercises to target certain muscles and all that. That was amazingly helpful and integral in my recovery. However, I realized I had this belief, and so many dancers have this, that if I'm not always doing my exercises, if I'm not eating perfectly, sleeping perfectly, doing all the things, my body will not get better. And this is where I want to invite you back into that trust. Your body actually, when you relax and let it do its thing, it wants to get better. It actually always has wanted to support you. That's why it's sending you the pain signals, because the pain signals aren't your worst enemy. They're actually saying, hey, take care of me. I want to help you dance for a long time. So that helps just release some of that control in the relationship with the body. Like, okay, if I'm not making my body do all these things, it's not going to get better. It's like, okay, sometimes when we have that mentality, we push way too hard, we get really stressed, and we actually slow down the healing process for ourselves. So question your relationship with your body and also with control. Even control over your emotions. I want to come back to that part of it. Like I said, you don't have to be so positive. This is actually a great time to acknowledge and process through the grief you might feel. Maybe you lost a performance opportunity. You're allowed to feel grief and loss over that. Maybe it's loss over another opportunity that was even much bigger. That's okay. You're allowed to process through your fear. It is so normal to feel super afraid that you won't get better. All these things are normal. And so I want to invite dancers to, instead of judging themselves for feeling those things and trying to avoid those thoughts and feelings, actually dive into them. And I don't say dive into them like go into the depths of despair and stay there. And of course, no one wants to do that anyway. So you don't even need to hear me say that. But I'd say it's a great time to get support professionally, whether it's through a therapist or a coach. I think there's a lot of benefit to talking to someone who understands what it's like to be a dancer psychologically, the whole culture that comes with it. That's why I really enjoy providing the coaching services that I do, because therapy is awesome. I'm a huge advocate for it. It is quite different than coaching. There are different issues that those two professions help with. And I'm always happy to get clear on that with dancers. But it's also great that dancers love to come and work with me or another professional like me, because they're like, I don't have to explain the whole dance thing. And I know that the tools you're providing are suited towards dancers. So it's a great time to get support. Even if you just talk to family members and you journal, allow yourself to express and acknowledge and validate and process through the emotions you're feeling so that you can release them and then move towards hope in the appropriate time. You don't have to force yourself to be positive. This is really just a great time to connect with your body and connect with yourself. And lastly, the last thing I'll say is grow in trust. Trust helps with acceptance. We all know it's nice to practice acceptance, but that's usually dancers' least favorite word, because again, the relationship with control, we're like, ew, acceptance, I hate that. Doesn't that just mean accepting less than what I want? Doesn't that mean just like laying down and taking whatever life gives me instead of making my own way? Ew, I can't accept. That's gross. Totally get that. I used to be there too. So what I want to bring up instead is trust. Have faith and trust. Like, trust in how many other dancers have also experienced an injury. And let me tell you, every single professional dancer out there, okay, I can't speak for every single one of them, but personal experience, every single one of them I've seen and I've talked to and met hundreds, they've all had an injury.
Yeah, well, the data supports that statement as well when we look at injury rates. So I think you're not wrong.
Yeah, okay. hey, even if I know Wendy Whalen was like, I never had so much as a bruised toenail, and she eventually got a hip injury. So I know there are lots of people who could be like, well, she didn't have an injury. Yeah, she did. So anyway, I mean, God bless her. I don't mean to mock or anything, but yeah. So back to that idea of faith. How many other dancers who have been through exactly what you've been through and they're dancing again? Or they found another way, maybe like myself, I don't dance full time anymore, but I found a relationship with dance that genuinely makes me happier than I used to be dancing full time, living the quote unquote dream. And I was happy. I'm not lying. I was very happy. But, you know, have faith that there will be a time when you're able to be pain free again. There will be a time when you feel comfortable in your own body again. We don't know exactly when, probably, but just keep having faith that, this is a process lots of people have been through. You are definitely not alone. It's normal to have fears, but you absolutely will get through this. And the more you give yourself the space and the time to go through whatever process you need and whatever time you need, the faster you'll probably experience that one day, I'm sure you see that a lot, Erika,
Yeah,
like the whole idea of slow down to speed up rather than speed
absolutely.
up and you get a slower recovery.
Absolutely. Something we talk about a lot in the clinic in terms of the process of, yeah, the whole healing.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. That's so fantastic. And I love how you like draw it back to sort of like the body's innate wisdom in terms of like its
Mm-hmm.
ability to heal as well. Cause that's again something we talk about a lot in the clinic where we, can guide clients and dancers in terms of like, some expectations. And this is sort of like how we're going to move towards getting back to full dancing, but the body's in control. And so we just
Yeah.
have to like honor that. And, we might have like setbacks, we might have times of plateau and things like that. But as long as we're like listening to the body and respecting it, we're all kind of working towards the same thing. And it's, yeah, that idea of like the body having the ultimate sort of say in matters. And sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
get people who come in who are like, fix me. And it's like, well, that's actually not our job. We're more of guides in this instance. And yes, we can, use our expertise to really help move people in the right direction and make sure that we're not doing things that are counterproductive. But at the end of the day, we're not here to fix anyone. We're here to
Mm-hmm.
just like help people through this process and sort of along this journey. So I love how that all like really ties in super, super nicely and lots of like actionable things
Yeah.
that people can start to think about in terms of, their mindset when they're going through some of these rough times here.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few, I'm just like aware of the time, and I have a few wrap up questions that I like to finish the kind of guest episodes with. If you are game for these, they're not quite rapid fire. They don't need to answer in one word necessarily, but kind of just like
I will do
fun.
my best.
Okay, awesome. So, first question, what is your favorite style or genre of dance? I have a feeling I might know the answer to this one, but
I love ballet.
I had a feeling that might be the answer. So, easy question for you. Next question, would you rather be on stage or in the studio?
Studio.
Any particular reason why?
Well, I've grown more and more in my love for being on stage. I used to genuinely, I don't think I cared that much. I was like, I love the process. I love being with my friends. I love rehearsing and like the build up to performing. I think I used to not like performing so much because of the anxiety and pressure I felt. Now I like it almost equally, but I just think, yeah, the studio has a soft spot in my heart, and it always will.
Awesome. If you could share the stage or the studio, maybe in this case, with any dancer, past or present, who would you choose?
Oh my gosh, I really hope some of my clients are listening because they're going to laugh. They know what I'm going to say. My queen, Marianella Nunez.
Amazing. I feel like no explanation needed.
No.
Yeah. And if you could go back in time and tell your younger self, so baby Kirsten dancing, one thing, or yeah, go back and talk to yourself as a young dancer, what would you tell yourself?
Hmm. Girl, just enjoy. You're fierce. You're more than a dancer. So whenever dancing isn't going perfectly. Don't worry. There's more to you than that. And you're going to find that. You're going to find that out one day.
Amazing. And finally, for the last of these wrap-up questions, if there's one thing that you can change about the dance world as it is right now, what would that be?
Easy. Oh my gosh, I will die on this hill, which is, I want dancers to stop self-deprecating. I want them to stop it. I want them to because, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not going to go off. I really won't, I promise. But when we do that inwardly, it obviously is something that ruptures our sense of self-confidence and self-respect. But also when we do it outwardly, it starts to model for other dancers that that's normal. We all do that. We all respond to compliments that way, or we all think that way about ourselves. And it just makes that more normal and easier to do for the next dancer. So I think it's contagious. And if we stop doing that, it would be a massive positive shift towards dancers showing more respect towards themselves.
Amazing. I love that so much and could not agree more.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, we will wrap things up there. I just want to say a massive, massive, massive thank you for taking time out to join me today. If people want to connect with you, learn more about programming that you offer, things like that, what's the easiest way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's really been my pleasure. You can find me pretty much everywhere at The Confident Dancer. So my website is theconfidentdancer.com. My YouTube channel and podcast is called The Confident Dancer. Instagram, it's Kirsten_The Confident Dancer. But I'm pretty sure if you just type in The Confident Dancer, I'll show up. So that's where you can find me.
Amazing. Well, thank you once again so, so, so much. And thank you everyone for listening into our conversation today. Hope you have a great day.